Welcome. We have a guest that we're doing a pre-recorded interview with, and Paul Peterson is an actor, author, advocate, and president emeritus of A Minor Consideration. Paul Peterson, welcome to my lair.
Well, thank you, Gail. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are a busy guy. It seems like you came out running the day you were born. And I'm not kidding. It takes talent to be thrown out of the Mickey Mouse Club.
Yes, it does. That's the conduct unbecoming a mouse in nature of my life.
Have you seen the original Mickey Mouses where he punches other people or characters? And when Mickey started, he wasn't quite a cute little guy. He was a little bit of a rip, you know?
Look, I was 9 years old when I was hired for the Mickey Mouse Club, and I didn't know that you had to be a professional. Right. I was a 9-year-old boy, and I loved what I did as a boy, but that didn't fit into the Hollywood template.
Right. A quote of yours: "I became a child actor because my mother was bigger than me." Want to explain that?
True.
Yeah.
Well, look, kids don't drive themselves to interviews. Kids don't sign their own contracts. We are the products of the parents to whom we are born.
Right. And I guess I didn't do much because only one of mine aspired to do anything, and the other two are kind of, So I guess I wasn't a good child, protege. I don't know. Actually, I have 3 wonderful kids, but only one ever considered acting, and it is.
Look, when you have a child that can sing and dance and act and doesn't mind rejection, you are under the gun. You've got your hands full. Mm-hmm. And that was me. My mom said to Montel Williams, "Montel, what was I supposed to do with him?" And that's the reality. Right. I could do those things. Now, I didn't fit in terms of my character with the Mickey Mouse Club, but I quickly went on to other events in my life, which were really quite remarkable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thought, a cage with a lock on it, for an active kid who's super talented comes to my mind, but that's against the law. But yeah, my daughter Christine did theater in school and all of that, and then she quickly realized, it's a rough business, even for an adult. It's a rough business. I've had Beverly Washburn on. I've had a lot of child stars and actors, and that paycheck isn't always there. And Jerry Lacey,
that's correct.
Yeah, Jerry Lacey said to me, when I was talking to him about it, because he did Dark Shadows and played against Sam, he says, "You learn to go without niceties because that money isn't always coming in right away. It can be a long spell between acting gigs and stuff. I don't know. You either have to be in love with it, or you have to just walk away from it, because I would not want to be worrying about a paycheck every week." But you did go on to commercials. You went on to the Donna Reed show.
Well, yes, but it wasn't just a quick transition.
No.
Once I had been fired from the Mickey Mouse Club, I did small parts, national commercials. Then all of a sudden, because I was so motivated, I was doing Ford Theater, Playhouse 90, Lux Video Theater. And by 1957, this is 2 years after the Mickey Mouse Club, I got this wonderful part in a movie called Houseboat with Cary Grant and Sophia Loren. And mind you, that was the best 7 months of my life. It was wonderful to do an A movie with a great part and to work with Cary Grant and Sophia Loren.
Any stories from that?
Well, gosh, stories. I called Cary Grant and Mr. G. We were friends until he died. He came to all of my weddings.
Oh, my goodness. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Well, it was. And even though I was 12 when we did the movie, I must tell you that working with Sophia Loren was one of the highlights of my life.
Who wouldn't? What male wouldn't want to work with her? I mean,
even a male at age 12.
Yeah. You became a teen. You did American Bandstand. You did a spot there. You bought your first sports car, and I kind of smiled because, oh my God, you said it was $10,000, but that was all tricked out. You know, that was with all the stuff and everything. And now you look at a simple minivan for $30,000. Ian.
Kel, you got to understand. It was a great time in my life.
Right.
I could buy the most expensive car in the world every 3 weeks, and things are always relative.
Right.
But I had a great time. It's fun to be rich and famous.
Yeah. Until this is where we get to the more serious part and the reason. You're an activist, you're an author, you're an actor, and you make a perfect for my show because I'm a cause person. Animals, children, the environment. There I am. I'm banging the drum, saying, "Hey, everybody!" And I wrote a little poem that a friend of mine, Charles Butler, recorded for me called "The Train." It's the life train. Children are on the same train, life, this planet, with the rest of us. And unfortunately, we tend to not see them. They're sitting right there, and we see them. And for the planet, I mean the entire world, there are children riding this same life with us. As we go through our lives, there are billions of children also going through the lives at the same time. So we're all on this same kind of train going. And
yes.
In Hollywood, and I guess entertainment, acting, it's in music, whatever, you're only important for as long as you serve a purpose.
That's right. Look, there's a wonderful song called "The Train Don't Stop Here Anymore."
Right.
When your career as a child comes to an end, it's over. And that is a critical transitional moment. It is so hard, Gail, to recognize in the time and place where you're living that something profound has changed. And in my life, when the Donna Reed show came to an end in 1966, I was the prototypical all-American boy, well-mannered, well-dressed, well-groomed, and out there in the real world were 500,000 troops in Vietnam. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and Timothy Leary. saying, tune in, turn out. It was a hard time to try to transition. And here's the fact. I didn't handle it very well.
Right. And who did? I have to say, I only really know of one person who continued on, and that was with, I want to say this right, Shirley Temple. She was America's sweetheart. The problem is nobody wanted to see her grow up because that makes us look at our own mortality. We have to look when we see
correct.
Right. When we see her growing up, we're going not oh my God, look how grown up she is. We're thinking in the back of our heads, oh my God, how old am I?
Yes, that's part of it. Look, we all have fascinations and favorites when we're kids, and one of the transitional moments of growing up is we put aside all those things of our past. Mm-hmm. Shirley Temple didn't change. We did.
Yes. Yeah, she ended up being an ambassador, but John Wayne said he thought she was a wonderful actress, but again, nobody wanted to see her grow up, and that was a big problem.
That's exactly correct.
Yeah, Mickey Rooney is another. God, what a rocky life. He was Andy Hardy for like 20 years or 30 years because nobody wanted to see him grow up.
Dale, he came to my house in 1969, uninvited, and sat me down in my own living room and said to me, Paul, get out of town, get your education, because Hollywood will not let you work for 25 years.
Right.
Now, why was that important? Because it happened to him.
Yeah, it did. And you know what? He was a wonderful actor. I mean, some of the stuff he turned out was incredible, but nobody wanted to see him grow up either, and it was the time. You're talking about, we went from World War I to World War II to Korea to Vietnam. I don't think that we've ever gone 20 years without being at war.
That's correct.
Yeah, and when we're in the depths of war, Hollywood tends to want to go for those more homey, Andy Hardy, Shirley Temple, lighthearted things, to take the mind of the watcher, the consumer off of what's going on out there. And then when things are peaceable, they go back to the war and the fighting and history and all of that. It's odd the way they do it, but I did a whole show on him, and his life was a real roller coaster life. And you talk about the young man from, first of all, you have a site that you've created, a minor consideration. Please explain what that is.
Well, back in 1990, 3 friends of mine ended up committing suicide, most famous of which was Rusty Hamer,
right?
The kid from the Danny Thomas Show. And it was on the morning that Rusty's death was announced that my wife and I woke up, this is a Sunday morning, in bed and went, that cannot happen again. Mm-hmm. When there's a kid actor in trouble, we're going to show up. Here's the deal with Rusty. I knew where he lived. I am very close to this day to his brother John. But, Dale, I didn't travel to his town of DeRidder. I didn't go see my friend, a guy who had been my buddy for 20 years.
Right.
And then he killed himself. And I said then that morning, that will never happen again. If there's a kid in trouble who is famous, I'm going to show up.
Yeah, and so many... what I want our listeners to understand and the importance of this show and Paul Peterson coming on the show is this is still going on. We're watching, and God forgive me, certain channels that have young actors, and Paul and I both have colds, so everybody's just going to...
I apologize.
Yeah, deal with it, people. It's life, you know. Actually, I have asthma. Paul's got a cold. But we still have young people being drawn into acting, the entertainment business, acting, singing, whatever. And they're doing... What they do is they'll take a 17-year-old kid, dress them like they're 14 or 12 because they look youngish, and America's like, oh my God, aren't they adorable? And they get hooked on them. But these people are growing up. Then the show goes into syndication. Hannah Montana has been 13 years old for what, 10 years, 20 years now? How old is this kid?
But look at the Miley Cyrus of reality.
Right.
When she suddenly was doing pole dancing on the American Music Awards, one of our psychologists said the most pertinent thing: who supplied the pole?
Right.
Gail, this girl was under the control of her parents, her dad, the choreographer, the director, the producers of the show. And what was it they were looking for? A 16-year-old twerking? Come on.
Yeah.
This was not her attitude. It was what, quote unquote, the media wanted out of her. Mm-hmm. And it's very sad. The same thing has happened to so many young women over the past 45, 50 years. Sherry Jackson from the Danny Thomas Show, Haley Mills. It goes on and on. Mm-hmm. Who are the people supplying the pole?
Right. Another thing that's come out of this, and it's a side kind of road, and that's how my show works, everyone. Everyone who's listened to me knows we kind of take little detours, but we always end up spot on at the end of the show. It's blurred lines for adults. We look at this kid and think, wow, she's only 13. But no, in reality, she's 17. You know, she just looks 13, and they're exploiting that. And now some weirdo sits there and says, oh, they want it. And it's actually blurring the lines of what's appropriate behavior between adults and children.
Gail, it's important to recognize that children, especially at age 13, 14, 15, are not the authors of their career.
Right. They
are surrounded by managers, agents, their parents. It's like the Olsen twins. Does anyone really believe that Mary-Kate and Ashley created their own production company and made a whole bunch of videos that featured the Olsen twins? Or was that maybe the creation of a bunch of adults who had an economic interest in promoting the Olsen twins?
Right.
That's what we have to remember.
Right. Yeah, I definitely think they have to be held, the industry, starting with parents, managers, agents, they have to be held at a much higher call than what we've seen.
Dale, it's a higher standard. And look what we're seeing on reality television today.
Oh, Jesus, don't even start,
what a
right?
Joke with the Goslings or the Duggars.
Yeah.
Or all of these new families. This is sick.
Yeah, it is.
These are
It is.
children whose childhoods are being stolen from them without compensation.
Right. We go back. Let's go back to the beginning, the Coogan Act. Jackie Coogan was a prolific child actor, and when he became an adult, he realized his parents had squandered all the money he had. They'd spent it. And so the Coogan Act was made in 1939, but it didn't go far enough to protect child actors and actresses.
No.
Shirley Temple's...
First of all, the Coogan law is only in the state of California.
Right.
Children, let me make this point as bluntly as I can. In 1938, in the Fair Labor Standards Act, children in the entertainment business were exempted from federal child labor laws. If you didn't work in California, if you didn't have a long-term contract, you were completely exposed. And that's the ugly reality of children. Because, you see, children are the property of their parents, like a cow or a car or a house. And that's the ugly reality of working children.
You have a site called A Minor Consideration, and I want to get it up here. And you also have the paulpeterson.com. Can you give us the address of the Addy of the A Minor Consideration?
Yes, it's called aminorconsideration.org. We are a 501c3, a federally chartered charity. We accept donations. We are trying to fix the reality of working children.
Yeah.
And, it's not just kids in show business. Also exempted from federal child labor laws with the kids in agriculture. That's
right.
About 800,000 kids who
Yep.
pick our food. Now, why are they exempt? How come their education and their income isn't protected? And that's what motivates us.
Yeah, I'm going to read right off your page. A Minor Consideration is a nonprofit tax-deductible foundation formed to give guidance and support to young performers, past, present, and future. Child stars must pick their parents with care, really, as if like Hooper Gloob Highway. Remember that cartoon and book, Hooper Gloob Highway, where the baby isn't born yet, and they're showing him his whole life and asking him, "Do you really want to go down there, bub? Is this what you really want?" If only there was something like that was available to children. How many children's lives would be so different, and it's not just in entertainment. I mean, there are moron parents all over the place that I look at them and think, why are we not licensing people, checking them out before we let them breed?
I wonder about that all the time. People seem to want to ignore the reality that children, let me repeat what I just said, are not the authors of their own fate.
Yeah.
It is astonishing to me that people forget how children are manipulated and pushed into enterprises that are not healthy.
Right.
They're just not healthy.
Or they're pushed into things that, in order to do it, they have to either be doped up or given something to sleep at night, something to wake up, something to make them not afraid. Jean Tierney, I've read a lot about her, and she pretty much had to, or Gail Russell rather, Gail Russell had to be drunk almost every time she got in front of the camera. That's how frightened.
I know. But look, Gail, look at our girls on the Olympic gymnastics team.
Mm-hmm.
We forced the United States Olympic Committee to do a medical survey of the 7 girls who were the composites of our gymnastics team. All of them had significant osteoporocal problems. They had the skeletal structures of 70-year-old women. Mm-hmm. None of them had a menstrual cycle. All of them had bulimia or anorexia problems. Mm-hmm. That is what we are doing to children.
Yeah. And I am. You know what? I told you, you're psychic. You read my mind. Because I was going towards, and I'm not going to mention a name, an Olympic gold medalist who was arrested yesterday for domestic abuse. After all the medals and the commercials and all of that, they're left with, I'm not able to do the Olympics anymore. I'm not really an actress, so I can't go on like Johnny Weissmuller or any of them did. So what do I do now? And they try to fit back into what we consider normal life, although my family makes the Addams family look lame. So we don't, we always say define normal, please.
Well, normal is such a fungible term. Look, the most privileged, highest profile children are, in fact, standing on the shoulders of 10,000 others who have worked just as hard, who have put in just as many hours, and never get the fame or the money.
Right.
And that's why a minor consideration is important. We speak for those 10,000 invisible children in the entertainment and sports complex whose welfare is not considered.
Yeah, they really aren't. And I call them child actors, a disposable commodity.
And that, of course, is what they are. But understand that for every kid actor you see on TV and in movies, there are 800,000 children picking our crops, who go from South Texas to the Arctic Circle without the protections of federal law, because guess what? They're exempt from federal child labor laws, just like the kids in the entertainment business.
Yeah. I had a guest called Ron Soldalter on, and he wrote a book called The Slave Next Door. And have you read that?
No, I have not read it.
It is a wonderful book, and it's not about sex slaves. It's about children and people brought into our country and sent out of our country, and they end up being domestic slaves, know, and I don't understand why it's still going on. I understand people are greedy and they will look for whatever they want at the cheap price. I want to have a career, so I need someone to clean my house. And if I can't afford to pay someone, I'll pay to get somebody into the country under the pretense that I'm going to employ them and give them the American dream, but then they end up basically being a slave, afraid to even move.
Correct. But understand, Gail, look, children are the property of their parents.
Right.
They are, in fact, indentured servants to the aspirations and hopes and perhaps the ugly truth about their parents. For example, in the world today, these are United Nations statistics from Convention 182, the Conventions on the Rights of a Child, there are 250 million children who go to work every day in the world. Now, what makes that statistic so ugly, Gail, is at the same time, 250 million heads of households are unemployed. Now, you want to fix this? Just change the equation. If you're an adult with children, you go to work and let your kids get their education and develop their character. But that's too simplistic, it seems, for the world we live in.
Yeah. We live in a very greedy world, and it's really unfortunate. Robert Mitchum's and John Mitchum, I had John's daughter on this week, those ornery Mitchum boys, and when they were 13 and 15, their mother handed them a hanky each and a clean pair of socks each. That's all she had. And she sent them across the country on their own, and they got separated. And John, at age 13, had to hobo on his own. Today, we look at children and think, I won't even send my 13-year-old granddaughter over across a couple of thousand feet to a store because, I don't think she could deal with it or handle it, And yet, back then, these children were being told, hey, go over to the West Coast to your sister. She's got a place, and we'll follow when we can, and just send them. And I thought, how much it's still the same now. Adults are looking to children. You go and do it and secure a life for us.
Yes, indeed. The more things change, the more they
stay.
Because understand, children are the property of their parents.
Right.
And for better or worse, that's reality. That's why my friend said, Ricky Sorensen, you have to pick your parents with care.
Yeah, it's a huge problem, and so what exactly is a minor consideration trying to do in legislation to change all this?
Well, it's very simple. Each of us has been to the movies 100 times in our lives, and at the end of the movie, during the credits, we see this. The animals engaged in this production were under the protection of the American Humane Association. And what that means is if you harm an animal during the production of a film, the film is declared hot goods and you can't exhibit it. We want the same protections worldwide that apply to animals.
Yes. And you have animal rights on your site as well.
Well, of course we do, because the rules for animals, when you read them and compare them to what rules apply to kids, are astonishing.
Yeah.
If you hurt a spider in any jurisdiction in the world, you are subject to sanctions. Why aren't the rules the same for kids?
Yeah. They say, oh, well, it's environmental. We have to protect the environment. Everything has its place in the environment. So do children. Well,
that's what we believe. And let me tell you, Gail, that's why the members of a minor consideration, these are 900 former kid stars, all of whom are in Trivial Pursuit, are engaged on this issue. We understand that the rules for children worldwide, any place, anywhere, ought to be the same.
Mm-hmm. It is. I get so annoyed thinking about, who was that kid? I can't remember his name. Gary Coleman. There was another kid actor, right? His life ended up being a damn roller coaster, and the rejection, and then something tragic happens to their life, and everybody goes, oh my God, what happened? Well, what happened is nobody was protecting them when they were children.
That is correct. And remember, there were two other kids involved. Dana Plato, dead at age 36, having lost custody of her own son, Tyler, and Todd Bridges, who at the time we formed a minor consideration, was in jail on attempted murder charges at the very same time. This is 1990.
Yeah.
And these problems, the absence of oversight and protection, have consequences. It is so sad to me for people to not realize that the highest profile kids in our world are not protected.
Yeah. It's unbelievable that all these kids, I mean, if you have a dysfunctional childhood, and Mickey Rooney, there's a perfect example. I'm going to keep going back to him because he was a studio kid, went to school at the studio, but they didn't worry about getting him a really good education. Nobody said to him, okay, Mickey, now that you're 17, we want you to go to college. There was nobody doing that. It was just do your job and be Andy Hardy, because nobody wants to see you grow up. And then when the Andy Hardy movies became unpopular, or they ran their course, he was left basically with a grammar school education. So what was he to do then?
That's right. And that's why he came to my house in 1969. This is, 4 years after the Donna Reed show. I didn't invite him. He arrived unannounced and barged into my front door and said to me in my own living room, you have to get out of town, get your education, because Hollywood won't let you work for 25 years. Was he right? Of course he was.
Yeah.
This is the guy, when he got the Emmy for Bill, looked at that audience with the statuette in his hand and said, when I was 18 and 19, I was the biggest star in the world, and then none of you would let me work.
Right.
That's the reality for famous kids.
Can I ask something? How did he zero in on you?
Are you kidding? He lived life. He didn't have to be invited. He knew what was going to happen to me. That's why he showed up at my 3.5 acres in Encino. He was trying to help me. Yeah. And guess what? He did, because within a year of his advice, I was out of town and back in college.
Yes, and you have a degree in literature and history, so please tell us about your books.
Well, that was a miracle. Let me, excuse me.
Just cough it up. Just cough it up.
Because of David Oliphant from Academic Industries, I was given an opportunity to write a book for Simon & Schuster, actually Trident, called High Performance Driving. This is 1972 or 3. And I delivered that book, and it was published and did quite well. And my life went from being a derelict to being, quote unquote, an author. How remarkable.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you something, and we're going to continue because you're an author, you're an actor, you're an advocate. Let me ask you, if you were on the Hooper Blue Highway and he said, hey, Paul, are you sure you want to go over? Would you do it over again?
Well, that's the Kate Smith song. If I had my life to live over,
yes,
I'd do
I love Kate
the same things again. Look, I am happy to accept all of the problems of my life, given that they have provided the motivation to do better. Not on my behalf. I will never have my childhood back again.
Right.
But if I can make it better for working kids today, then that's okay.
You know, we all have a purpose, and I say this all the time. You may not find out what your purpose was for being on this earth until you're on your deathbed and something happens and you go, oh, is that why I was here? I'm 104 years old, and this is why I was here to for this particular, to show this problem with this medicine or to whatever. We all have a purpose, and
well, that's true. But Gail, I must tell you, on January 19th, 1990. When Rusty Amer's death was announced. Now, mind you, Rusty Amer was my friend. He was on the Danny Thomas Show. We raced cars together, chased the same kind of girls. I, that morning, got a tap on my shoulder.
Right.
And if you don't answer that call from God to devote your life, you are making a mistake. I can't tell you that I decided to do this. I was given this task.
Right.
I know the morning. I know how I felt. I know what I said to my wife that morning in bed. This will never happen again. If there's a kid actor in trouble, I'm going to show up. And that's why a minor consideration lives. That's why it exists. Because there are kids today being thrown into this meat grinder of public acclaim who are not prepared to deal not with the consequences day to day, but for the future. And you and I, Gail, are responsible for the next 20 years.
Right.
That's all we ask. Look ahead. Look ahead.
Look at the damage you're doing before you do it.
Well, yes.
Yeah.
How many young athletes do we see who are illiterate, ill-educated, who go from high school to college and end up graduating college like, let's say, O.J. Simpson, who has a degree in chemical engineering, who are incapable of dealing with life?
You just struck a chord. I live in New Jersey, and there's a high school here that was in the news a year ago, for hazing, and it was disgusting hazing. And when they said they were disbanding the football team, and the town took over and said Board of Education said we're canceling all the football games. We're disbanding the team. There were parents there who were howling, but my son has a chance and is being looked at by this team or that team. And I'm thinking, and I'm not going to mention the school, but it's all over the news. You can look. And I'm thinking to myself, and, they used toothbrushes and stuck them up young new ball players' rear ends and stuff. I mean, what the hell?
Yes.
Really, is this what we want?
This is the sickness. I try to explain to people when they ask me about stage parents. I said, don't ask me about stage parents. Go to a high school football game on a Friday night and watch not the game, but the behavior of the parents in the stands.
Or Little League.
tells you all you need to know about the true status of high-profile young performers.
Yeah, Little League. You see the parents throwing fisticuffs, and they're screaming at their kids and yelling, "Why did you drop that? You should have had that. You should have been able to do that. What were you thinking of?" And you're sitting there saying, my God, this is supposed to be something that builds their character, not tears them apart.
Well, exactly, and look what we have today with the Disney Channel. The Disney machine promoting the World Series of Little League. And you say to yourself, wait a second, how many adults are making a living off the innocent efforts of young kids?
Yeah.
These are 12-year-olds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess it's true with everything. You've got all child, what do you call it? Organizations, the powder puff football, or the minor leagues.
How about soapbox derby, Gail?
Yeah.
This was a good one. We had a big scandal some years ago where the winner of the soapbox derby existed under protest. And when they examined his winning vehicle, they found there was a magnet in the nose of his car, which gave him a minuscule advantage at the start. And the father, who had built the car, said, "Tear down all the cars." And when they examined the top 10 finishers, they found a magnet in the nose of every vehicle.
So we're basically right off the start teaching our kids that any means necessary.
That is correct.
Any means necessary.
The ugly part. And we are laying this lack of honor off on our children. Yeah.
And again, even there was a Law and Order about gymnastics, and they were going after somebody for pedophile, and saying you had sex with her. It turned out this girl was like 22 years old, but looked like she was 14 because she stopped eating. She didn't get her menstrual cycle. She did this, she did that, to stay in the program because one parent was so adamant, they can make it, they're just not trying hard enough. And then you look at this person 20 years later, and a lot of child actors and actresses and stuff, and laborers, and you think that mentally this didn't scar them, and they're not angry, and eventually that terrible, terrible dragon inside them isn't going to come out and lash out at people.
That's right. Well, look, this is the Lindsay Lohan phenomenon. This is a problem that is endemic to our society because not enough people are there to say, time out, let's examine the reality of this high-profile child.
Right.
We all have to be more careful when we see a child jump into the public consciousness to say, what's going on?
Yeah. Do you think the courts, when a kid gets into acting, should maybe appoint a child advocate for children? Do you think that should be like a clause or something that should be looked into?
Oh. Absolutely. But here's the problem. We have 50 states in the United States, and if you are working in a jurisdiction outside of California or even New York, the courts are reluctant, Gail, to intrude on the parent-child relationship, feeling that somehow or another parents will always do what is best for the child. And that is nonsense.
Yeah, and you know what? We've got a couple of pretty babies in our family, and you go through the mall, and somebody will approach you and say, "We'd like to take some pictures of your kid. She could be a model." This
amazing?
is big, it's big business. Children are big business in this country, and they're not being well served by.
No, of course not. Yeah, look at the world of beauty pageants.
Oh, yeah.
Globally, the world of beauty pageants, mostly young girls, is a $5 billion business. Mm-hmm. That means 100,000 adults are making a living exploiting children. Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we shut that down?
Oh, who is it? The kid that played Opie, and I have a brain.
Ron Howard.
Ron, yeah, and the other guy from Polar Express, Tom Hanks. They did this spoof because of Honey Boo Boo and children and tiaras and stuff. They did that Facebook spoof where they're battling each other for their child to be the little queen at the pageant, and Tom Hanks is yelling at his daughter and saying, "You got to walk like this, and you got to do this," and as funny as it is to watch, you look back at Honey Boo Boo, this is my go-go juice, and find out that she's got more caffeine in her than the Dallas Cowboys, and wonder how their life is going to end up. And John Bonet, her mother pushed her into pageants. And
her mother and grandmother.
Yeah.
Remember, it was the grandmother who put the mom into the beauty pageant world, and she married well, a very wealthy man, except she produced John Bonet Ramsey.
Yeah. Yeah, and she left these kids alone a lot, and the older boy, you got to ask yourself what all this attention on the new little girl did to his life, because he was kind of like, well, babysit her and keep her safe while we go do this, that, and the next thing.
Right.
So he became a surrogate parent. You got to see the anger that built up in him. I don't know what happened. During the 50s, my brother babysat us because we're immigrants, and my mom lucked out and got a job at, RCA and stuff like that. And, but you know what? We played Cowboys and Indians. Nobody was looking at us as a meal ticket.
Yes.
And it's horrible.
You gotta understand that for all of the high-profile children we have known over the past 100 years, there are siblings. There are brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. What happens to them?
Yeah.
I know in my own family, when I look at the melancholy of my older sister, Pam, who was beautiful and talented, she fell into the shadow of my celebrity. How ugly is that?
Yeah, like the story Stand By Me. Stephen King, the older brother was the football star, and the other kid was, why didn't you die? Why did it have to be Danny? Yeah, it's true. One family has one star, and the other children kind of become collateral damage,
Yeah, more important than that. And I have been around for 60 years in the business, and I can tell you there are more stage parents, moms and dads, who have jobs in the industry than former kid stars who have continued a career in the business.
And that's
that
sick.
Should tell you plenty.
Yeah. I promised to keep you about an hour, but I do want to touch on, it's a sad anniversary for you. Donna Reed passed away 30 years ago.
That's correct.
Tell people something about Donna Reed that they don't know, because she was a strong woman, and a lot of people look at her as she might have been a bit of a tough cookie because she fought her way through, she got through and all. Tell people stuff they don't know about her.
Well, understand that our first year on the Donna Reed Show was the last year of Father Knows Best at the same studio. And Robert Young, the dad on Father Knows Best, wrote in his biography that he was an active alcoholic. during the production of Father Knows Best.
Right.
And Donna Reed, very smart and sensitive woman, and Carl Betts, a Carnegie Award winner from Carnegie Mellon University, pledged that they would not be those kinds of people. So our education and character development, and by our, I mean Shelley Fabre and I, were the beneficiaries of the very considered concern of Donna Reed and Carl Betts. And that, frankly, is why we've turned out as we have. They did not abandon us. They promised us friendship and connection, and they lived up to that till their dying day.
Yeah, it was a few years after Donna Reed closed, and you were talking to her, and she said, "Paul, it's time for you to call me Donna."
It was a miraculous day, Gail. You have to understand, I called her mom on the set for 8 years.
Right.
And I called her mom when we were together privately. In front of other people, I called her Miss Reed. And it was she at a luncheon at Chasen's who said to me, "Paul, I'm 26 years old. I think it's time for you to call me Donna." She changed our relationship. And she was a remarkable woman. Carl Betts was more than a father to me. He was an example. This highly trained, university-educated artist who loved to paint and read Shakespeare to me over lunch cared more about me as a person than a fellow performer.
Right. Do you think she was a little bit, she kind of saw the way things were going for child actors at the time and tried to make a difference in her own way?
Oh, of course she did. She had plenty of examples. It wasn't just Father Knows Best. You know, it was Bachelor Father. It was That's My Mama. It was the history of Hollywood. She was aware of that. You know, Donna was a contract player at MGM. She was nobody's fool. She knew the business, and she knew what it did to children.
Yeah.
And she took every pain to make sure it didn't happen to us, Gail. She seemed,
the one thing that always came off of her like a vibe was that she was smart. She wasn't just an airhead actress that landed a part and pretended to be a wise mother or a wise person or a compassionate person. She actually was those things.
Well, that's correct. You know, Shelley and I often talk about this reality. We were the visible faces of Donna Reed's offspring. But at home, Donna Reed had 4 children. Penny, Tim, Mary, and we became a family, even though folks didn't know about this. And these relationships are still intact. Here we are, 30 years later, and Shelley and I consider our brothers and sisters to be the 4 children of Donna Reed, the real children.
You have to, because you're growing up together and you're on a set every day. Before we leave, you're also very concerned with the plight of senior actors and actresses. Yes. And I have to tell you, I think the seniors in America as a large group, we're all in big trouble.
Yes, indeed. That's why I hosted a show for the Department of Aging called Aging Well in L.A.
Yeah, it's almost impossible right now.
Yes.
Yeah. What are your big concerns? I mean, my concern is medicine or food, medicine or shelter, medicine or this, because so many of, when you're young, gentle listeners, and there are a lot of young listeners that'll be listening to this recording, you're healthy. You don't need health care. You're healthy. Your body has not betrayed you. I was diagnosed with lupus when I was 40, and then I got the double whammy. Guess what? You got MS too. Congratulations. And you know what? I never drank, never did drugs, never smoked, and I'm like, I know drunks healthier than I am. That's how I know drug addicts that are actually healthier than I am. What gives? What gives? But the deal is that when you become older and your body betrays you, or even if you're young and your body betrays you, you still have to have shelter. You still have to, provide for yourself. And this country is becoming, in my opinion, intolerant of older people.
Well, I agree with you, Gail. It's the Hollywood myth that aging is somehow okay. You can be active, you can be sexually active, you can be vital, you can be without impairment. And the truth is, when we get old, our options become limited.
Yeah. I get very annoyed when I hear 40 is the new 20, 60 is the new 40. I want to gag. And I look and say, I wouldn't do those years over again if you paid me. We have one shot at life, and you either age gracefully, and I'm not saying you have to look like the witch from Darby O'Gill, the banshee from Darby O'Gill, which I do, but that's beside the point. But the thing is, you can take care of yourself. You can try to look your best, but the bottom line is, in America right now, age is taboo. Aging is not a good thing. Everybody,
that is correct.
And no one is comfortable in their own skin. Everybody wants to change everything about themselves because they're having a bad day. So you had a bad day, that song always goes, say, change your sexuality, change your body, mutilate your body, go under the knife, get liposuction, get this, get that. I would need a new heart and lungs to keep going much longer, and I wouldn't live through the surgery, so don't ask me to go and get fat cut off. That's not happening. Or a wrinkle fixed on my face.
I know what you're saying. It drives me crazy. And look, I've been the beneficiary of great genetics. My dad was vital till his death. My grandpa Burr was vital till his death. I look pretty good, but something? My lungs don't work. My knees ache. My back hurts because I'm 70 years old.
Genetics don't help age. Eventually it catches up with you.
Of course it does. And remember what the end chapter is for all of us is that we die.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Man was not meant to live on this earth forever. God said it. It's not good that man lives this long.
Some of us have been lucky enough to create images that will outlast us. That's fine. And some of us have been lucky enough to create changes that will improve the lives of those who come after us.
Right, legacies.
The operative term here is after us. All of us must contribute to the continuance of humankind.
Right. That's what I say. God, just use me that you might be glorified and I might help someone else. Make it a little easier for them. Let me be the difference that's needed at the moment. And so what actors and actresses, when they start losing those parts, what are their options? Because I'm not an actor or actress. I mean, I know you have the Screen Actors Guild and like a pension type system, but even at that, and we were talking about this with Cindy Mitchum about this, a lot of their work is sold on DVDs and stuff, but they don't see any residuals for this. Like Fathers Know Best. Are you getting residuals at all from that?
No, of course not. But you know something? There is a progression in the world where we have finally recognized that for people in show business, that they ought to be compensated into perpetuity for the work they did, because nobody should get rich without paying the people who actually did the product.
Right.
Now, Dan, I'm getting awful tired here. I got to take my med. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
God bless you. Love you and be well.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.